for tuning in today and joining us in another Spiceworks Partner webinar, Virtualization Deployment Made Simple for ROBO and SMBs with StarWind and Veeam, brought to you by StarWind and Veeam. Before we get started, I do want to remind everyone this webinar is being recorded. If you have to step away for any reason, you will get an email with a link to the video in about a week. Also, there's a Q&A box on your screen to the left. We encourage you to submit your questions at any time during this presentation, and we'll get those questions at the end via a verbal Q&A. But if your question isn't addressed live, someone will be able to follow up with you. Now I'd like to introduce our presenters, Max Kolomintsyn, Product Manager at StarWind, and Cody Cheek, Systems Engineer for Veeam Software. So Max, whenever you're ready, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. And we've already been introduced, so I will just briefly say I've been with StarWind for quite a while, almost 10 years at this point. People usually don't live that long. And I've done all kinds of stuff in this company except of actual R&D. So I've broke the code, I tested the code, I've seen it working, and I architected solutions on it. And I'm also passionate telling about that experience and some other prof experiences on Spiceworks, where I'm quite active as Max at StarWind. And our second speaker today is Cody Cheek. Cody is a systems engineer with Veeam Software, and he's been with Veeam for more than 2 years and is an avid virtualization enthusiast. And he'll probably tell you much more than I can because of this shy bullet point list. I'm sure that he is much more than just these 4 bullet points. But anyway, let's get back to our topic. So a lot of companies, despite of their size and their profitability, require IT infrastructure which is simple, reliable, and resilient. And they also require stuff economists say, like CapEx and OpEx being lower. So basically, they want to spend less and get more. And there are a lot of ways of getting there. And as one of our fellow IT enthusiasts and professionals, John Toigo, said, we need to take out the snake oil from hyper-converged market and see where the real hyper-convergence is and what the real offering is. And on this webinar, we'll try to focus on real hyper-convergence and see what is the base of this offer, what are your real benefits, and how it is easy to accomplish that. So StarWind has partnered with multiple companies. Specifically, the core of the product is StarWind Veeam and Five9, being the storage, backup product, and management product, to create a storage agnostic and a hardware agnostic platform which would support multiple hypervisors. And eventually we got to a point where customers need a ready solution. So just saying that you are hardware agnostic is not enough. You need to be responsive for what you're selling up to the point where you also provide the hardware. So we ended up partnering with Arrow and Xbyte, who deliver Dell servers and providing a pre-configured turnkey solution based on this equipment. And the next slide will have a huge spreadsheet with our specifications, but what I just want to emphasize on is our ability to support anything from just robo offices where you can just put 2 tower servers for all their workloads, and that will be sufficient. Then we have a typical scale-out platform with 1 unit servers. 2 of these servers are sufficient to start with, so there is no need to put in the entire rack or buy 4 servers like a lot of vendors do. What we find really cool is the ability to start with minimum number of hosts and already be resilient. So next server, which is X large, is our high density storage and compute environment, which not only is capable of doing VDI and is mostly used for that purpose, but is also really flexible in terms of additional components in there. And yes, you've heard it correctly. It is possible to modify these servers for your order. And if you need more network cards, if you need more RAM in these boxes or other components, it is possible to add that. We are not using static configuration, so you can pick the base configuration and then you can always upgrade it later on. And we have also the XL Ultra, which is able to push up to 1 million IOPS. I guess that would be the most basic and simple description of that. So within just 4 units of rack space, you'll have highly available and resilient configuration, which can deliver astonishing performance. So that is something to consider for high-performance compute environments. Then, when I was talking about being flexible, it also means not only being flexible on-site, but also being flexible off-site. Cody will tell you more about backups and disaster recovery because Veeam is the king of that market, but StarWind is doing a thing which complements it, which is site recovery, possible to Microsoft Azure. And also, it can cooperate between multiple offices, as shown on this slide, being your head office, your branch offices, and the cloud. This can all work together in one ecosystem and coexist. So when I was talking about node flexibility, I actually meant we can start with this type of a server, let's say a Dell R630 with 2 CPUs, 64 gigs of RAM, 4 drives, and 2 SSDs. And then we can simply add 2 more CPUs which are more powerful to this config. And it's not prohibited. It doesn't violate your warranty as long as you're doing it correctly and as per prescription, let's say. And then you can also add more RAM to this box. It's also not prohibited. Add more drives to this box. And of course, when you go to the actual number of boxes on this platform, you can start with 2. You can easily add 1 more or 2 more, or you can actually add more storage to these boxes. So let's say you want 2 nodes being storage intensive. On these 2, your file server will run, and the other 2 will be more compute intensive. Of course, you can add more storage to all of the platforms, and you can add more components to all of the platforms. This is what really differentiates StarWind's hyper-converged appliance from other players on the market and makes it possible to build a solution which really fits your needs and not go for buying a whole extra node if you only need to put 1 more virtual machine in the configuration. Now, I will get down to software which keeps these servers together and makes it possible to get a highly resilient storage environment behind this appliance. Now, StarWind's Virtual SAN is the software which virtualizes local storage of these servers and then represents it back as highly available storage resource. And it does it by mirroring these hard drives between the servers. So should any of the servers go offline for any reason, your data will still be available on the other nodes. So let's say we have 3 servers in this picture, and StarWind can technically replicate between 3 of them at the same time. So even if 2 of these systems die, your virtual machines will still be available on the remaining server as long as it has enough resources to start up these virtual machines. And this configuration can go on and on and on. The Hyper-V cluster has a limit of 64 nodes. As far as I remember, vSphere cluster has the same limit. StarWind can technically scale further, but that's something we simply don't need as the hypervisor is not growing beyond that. So at point of 64 nodes, we can simply start adding storage. So these boxes were built a new cluster. Now, a question which I'm asked really often is, why do we do hyperconvergence versus dedicated SAN environment? And why is it a trend? Because a lot of people think hyperconvergence is just hype. Not really. It all depends on how you do it, and it all depends on your approach to the actual storage. So in a typical SAN environment, when our virtual machine and an application inside the virtual machine wants to write some data to the disk, it informs the hypervisor, then the data goes to the initiator, then it goes through the storage fabric marked as network here, then it only gets to the cache on the SAN, and only then it is written to the disk on the SAN. So StarWind tries to make things faster, especially in a world where we have RAM, where we have NVRAM, where we have tons of flash getting cheaper and cheaper. Dedicating an all-flash SAN is not really a good thing to do to your application latency and performance. There are only few scenarios where you can do that. Other than those scenarios, it's really good idea to keep your flash as close as you can. And the reason is hidden behind the green arrow. With StarWind, your I/O goes directly from the hypervisor to the local RAM of the server, and then it is written to the disk. It emits the entire networking stack, it emits the entire storage fabric, and not only from the virtual and logistical standpoint. With StarWind, you do not have a proprietary storage fabric. With StarWind, you do not have proprietary initiator cards and stuff like that. It's all done with commodity hardware, and we're working with local RAM, and we're pinpointing our I/O to the local storage. Thus, we can always do it fast and do not rely on the network to fetch our data. So this is just the storage approach. And as I said, we have partnered with Veeam and Five9 to deliver a really unified solution. And we have developed a management platform which is unified. So Five9 started with doing a really good job for making Hyper-V management simple and intuitive. So basically, they have provided a really convenient tool for managing Hyper-V on all levels. You can manage virtual networking here, you can manage the host, the clusters, the data center. So everything you're usually doing through Microsoft's failover cluster manager is done here, but easier. So I will not get into a lot of details, but let's say if we focus on storage part of it, you can monitor the entire storage stack of StarWind from Five9 Manager. And of course, you can control your backups. That is another integration Five9 did, which is really great and allows us to control the entire appliance from one place and don't resort to going to different management tools for different tasks in the environment. Cody will definitely provide you more details about how Veeam backup works and what are the new features it provides with Availability Suite version 9. But from here, I would just say that all these actions are easily accomplished within one console, and we find it really cool compared to the, let's say, off-the-shelf offers provided by hypervisors or simply reference architectures. So with that, I would like to transition to Cody's part and unleash more information on keeping your data safe, which Cody should gladly provide us.
All right, I appreciate it, Max. Yeah, guys, again, my name's Cody Cheek, Systems Engineer at Veeam Software. So like Max was talking about, the Veeam and StarWind solution, a great combination together. I believe Max had even touched on it as well, that when you purchase the StarWind appliance there, Veeam automatically is installed on that box. You have our Essential Standard Edition, right? So there's different editions of our products, which we'll get into in just a second as well. But guys, if anyone has any questions, StarWind or Veeam related, please throw that in the Q&A box. I want to make this as conversational as possible, and I want to make sure everyone is coming away from the webinar having learned something. So, like Max had said, we are on the version 9 here of the Availability Suite solution. So there's a few points I want to touch on, just Veeam-centric. So you see there on the screen, there's high-speed recovery, data loss avoidance, verified protection, leverage data, and then complete visibility. Those are our 5 main pillars here that we're going to be focusing on when we're looking at the Availability Suite solution. So obviously, we're going to focus on virtualization. The Veeam Availability Suite, that's strictly what it focuses on. We strictly handle VMware and Hyper-V environments. On the VMware side of the house, if you're new to Veeam, we absolutely can back up and replicate your virtual machines to any disk-based storage device, as well as take those virtual machines you're running in production and make a fully hydrated exact copy of those, either on another VMware box or another Hyper-V box, just depending on which hypervisor you've actually standardized on there. So one of our sayings as well is our RTPO, which is an RTO and RPO that we've combined, so recovery time point objective of less than 15 minutes for all applications and data. So a few notes about the Availability Suite solution. We are licensed per CPU socket on the managed host. So if you have one ESXi host in your environment, and say it's a dual processor server, all you need is 2 Veeam licenses for that, and you're good to go. Now, when it comes to backup and replication, there's going to be 3 main components that make up the architecture. Very, very straightforward, and it's very flexible. So the first thing to note on the Availability Suite solution is that it is completely agentless. So it's not like the legacy products out there where we're going to install an individual agent on every one of your virtual machines, right? You have Exchange. We're not only going to have to install an agent on that Exchange server, we have to charge you for that. Veeam is completely agentless, so you don't even have to worry about that anymore. So I want to talk on the architecture for backup and replication, though. So you see on the top of the diagram there that is going to be the Veeam backup server. Veeam is just a Windows application, so you can install that on a physical Windows box or a virtual Windows box, completely up to you. So it is very flexible, so if you have an existing server that you want to install the software on, perfectly fine. Just make sure it's a Windows 64-bit operating system, and you're good to go. Or maybe you don't have extra hardware laying around, you want to spin up a virtual machine, perfectly fine to do so as well. So the backup server is going to serve as the brains of the operation, performing all of your jobs, whether they're backup jobs or replication jobs or even restores. You see the proxies there deployed as well. These allow us to scale the Veeam solution out to your environment. So what the proxies are going to be doing are all of our deduplication and compression that takes place in our job. So whether you're backing up one virtual machine with the Veeam solution or you're backing up 1,000 VMs with the Veeam solution, you should still have the same performance and still be able to meet within that backup window. And then the third component here, as far as architecture, you see on the right-hand side of the diagram, that is going to be the backup repository. So Veeam is completely storage agnostic. You want to back up to a SAN, perfectly fine, maybe a NAS device or a Linux server, CIFS SMB share, perfectly fine to do so. Veeam even has integrations with the EMC data domains of the world, the Exagrids, and HP Store Once devices. But also, if you look at the StarWind appliance as well, right? Like Max was saying earlier there, it's very, very flexible, and that you can add additional drives to that appliance. You can absolutely leverage a partition you've created for that StarWind appliance for your backup repository. That way, everything is held within that server itself. You have the backup server with its virtual machines. You have your backup repository and the proxy. So it can all be held within one central location there for you guys. So multiple ways we can go about running a replication job as well, because like we said, it is backup and replication. So replication, this is providing that true DR solution for you guys out there. So we're going to take your production, say, SQL server or Exchange server. What we can now do is make a fully hydrated exact copy of that virtual machine, replicate it, and send it to another either Hyper-V box if you're running a Hyper-V environment, or another VMware box. And in the case of a true disaster there, maybe not just one virtual machine were to crash, but maybe the entire host had crashed. Right? Or God forbid, maybe the entire site was wiped out, maybe a tornado or a fire, for example. You now have a fully hydrated exact copy of that production VM living on another host. All you need to do is power it on. Because like we said, it is going to be fully hydrated, registered in inventory, ready to go. So that is Veeam replication. A lot of people think when we say replication, we're talking about replicating the backup file. Now, Veeam absolutely has the ability to replicate the backup file. We just don't call that a replication job. If you want to replicate the Veeam backup file that is going to be deduplicated and compressed, we call that a Veeam backup copy job. So Veeam, we have functionality built into the software to get those virtual machines back up and running as quickly as possible, right? That RTPO of less than 15 minutes for all applications and data. So from here, I want to drill into one of our demo labs here and actually show you just how quick we can get a virtual machine back up and running. And guys, if anyone has any questions around anything we're going over, like I said, please throw that in the Q&A box. I want to make this as conversational as possible. So if there's something you want to go over or you have a quick question about, feel free to ask. Now, for you guys out there that are new to Veeam, this is backup and replication. This is version 9. This is the latest and greatest version that we are on today. It was actually released, I believe, January 12th. All right, so there's some great new features and functionality there that you can absolutely leverage. So, first things first, let's go perform a restore. So as you can see here, the interface is very easy to navigate. Everything is wizard-driven. So when I need to go restore something, I just choose the big restore option at the top of the screen. From here, you'll notice this window pops up, and then I have my options here. Like I said, we can restore from a replica because Veeam is going to take that production VM, make a fully hydrated exact copy of that virtual machine, and send it to another either VMware or Hyper-V box. So we have options here on the right-hand side to restore from replica, whether we fail over to that replicated virtual machine or we grab individual files from those replicated virtual machines. Normally, what we're going to be doing is leveraging our backup files. Replication is normally leveraged in the case of a true disaster, a site's wiped out, whatever it may be. So we have our instant VM recovery functionality, and I like referring to this as a spare tire, and this is why. If a virtual machine is to crash, what Veeam can do is actually leverage our patented vPower technology so we can boot up that crashed VM from our backup storage. So essentially, when that virtual machine is running from the backup storage, I like referring to that as the spare tire, because the performance of that virtual machine running on the backup storage is dependent on the performance of the backup storage itself, right? So spare tire. But then when you're ready, we can migrate it back online. We can leverage the existing VMware or Hyper-V technology to migrate that back online for you without having to shut down the virtual machine. And that's where we merge all the changes together. So if we walk through that process, I'm going to choose Instant VM Recovery. From here, we have a number of different backup jobs. So as you can see on the screen, I'm going to pretend like I'm the IT administrator here. So I'm going to act like my server here had just crashed, and I need to get it back up and running as quick as possible. So I just chose the virtual machine, and now I go choose which point in time I need to restore that virtual machine back to, right, for whatever reason that may be. From there, remember, we're going to migrate it back online, so I can specify exactly where I want to migrate it back online to. So for demonstration purposes, we're going to choose to restore this to a new location. From here, Veeam has visibility into our entire virtual environment. So if you're running a VMware environment and if you're licensed for vCenter, I absolutely recommend when you're getting Veeam set up, add the vCenter server. It's going to be easier for you from a management standpoint because once you add the vCenter server, like you see here on the screen, we now have visibility into maybe the different locations under that vCenter umbrella, maybe the different clusters under that vCenter umbrella. So what I'm going to do here is I'm choosing exactly which host I'm going to migrate this virtual machine back online to. And then once it validates it and grabs the configuration for that host itself, I'm going to drill in and choose the specific virtual machine folder, as seen here. And then I'm going to put my name to the right of this virtual machine. That way when we jump into vSphere here in just a second, we can drill into those details. Choose the resource pool. If you want the changes that are being written to this virtual machine sent to a particular data store, check the box here and tell us which data store you want those changes being written to. We can throw a reason in here. Maybe it's something that happened, an event in the organization that had caused that virtual machine to crash in the first place. You can do this for auditing reasons. And then lastly, I power it on automatically and connect it to the network. And right now it's performing the restore process. So you'll see it step by step as far as what's going on in the environment. It says starting VM recovery. And when we're ready to finalize this restore process, because remember, Veeam is going to be booting this virtual machine from our backup storage, and it's going to be running from our backup storage. So when this is finished, when it is fully powered on, registered in inventory, it is going to say waiting for user to start migration. So as you can see here, step by step, what's going on in the environment there with that crashed VM that we're now booting up. It's registering it in inventory, and it's going to power it on automatically. And then now up at the top left-hand corner, as you see here where it says instant recovery, that's where we're going to go finalize that restore. And so if we jump into vSphere here, we can now drill into those details. So as you'll notice here in our environment that we'll have a resource pool, and that virtual machine we just booted up with my name to the right of it will be right there. So as you can see, that virtual machine is powered on. It's registered in inventory. If I need to console into that virtual machine, I absolutely can. So our users now have access to that machine. So that got us back up and running in a matter of a couple minutes, however long it took me to walk through that process there. Then from there, when we're ready, we just migrate it back online, and that's where we're going to merge all the changes together there for you. So as we jump into backup and replication again here, you'll notice on the left-hand side, we have options for backup. We have options for replication, backup copy. So everything that we've already discussed today is right there, easy for you to view and go drill into when you need to. So as you can see, instant recovery is populated. So when I'm ready to migrate this back online, it really is as simple as just clicking on the job, and we can either right-click on it, migrate to production, and that's that. And that's where we're going to merge all of the changes together without having to shut down the virtual machine. So that is our instant VM recovery functionality. But keep in mind, guys, we can absolutely restore to the granular level, right? We need to go restore something within an Exchange server, right? Maybe in a particular email. We absolutely can. So I would go choose that virtual machine. I choose which point in time I need to restore it to. I hit next and then finish. What Veeam does is we take the backup file that Veeam's created that is compressed and deduplicated. We take that backup file, mount it to the Veeam server, and then we open it up in the Veeam Explorer for Microsoft Exchange. As you can see it here up on the screen, we are mounting that restore point. So whether you're leveraging multiple Exchange databases, does not matter. All you need to do is go drill into that user. Maybe it's their inbox, maybe a particular email that you need to restore. Just double click on it. See if this is exactly what you need. And then right click and restore. And as you can see here on the screen, you have your different restore options. We can save message file. We can export it as a PST file. and then we can restore it back to its original location like it never left. So you have your options, and this is just one of the granular restore options here that we have with Veeam. So if anyone has any questions around any of the topics we've discussed today so far regarding Veeam, please throw that in the Q&A box. Like we said, we have an hour blocked off for the webinar today. I want to hang around here towards the end to go over any questions as well for you. Now, keep in mind, guys, Veeam, we started out with free stuff. We really do. We have even a free edition of our backup and replication solution. Keep in mind that the functionality is going to be limited, right? It is going to be full backups. You can't schedule the free edition of our backup product, even though you can leverage scripts to automate that process for you. We even have a free edition of our Veeam 1 tool, which is providing monitoring, reporting, as well as capacity planning for your virtual environment. Right, so we can go drill into as far as the processes for a particular virtual machine, or we can have automated reports sent to us on backup storage requirements and backup storage space. Visio, we have a free tool out there for stencils, map out the environment from a high level. And then as well, we also have our endpoint product that was released late last year. This free Veeam endpoint backup tool is really built for backing up Windows-based laptops and desktops. Now, people have been doing that, using that tool to back up server instances of Windows. Just keep in mind that endpoint product, one, it is absolutely free, so you can't beat the price point on it. And two, it just needs to be Windows, and it does integrate to a certain degree with our Availability Suite solution. But like I said, you can go to veeam.com there on the bottom of the screen, and you can check all of this out here for yourself. What I would recommend is download the full 30-day trial licenses of our products if you are interested. 30 days starts from the time that you download it, but you are going to have full functionality. Right? Every possible functionality when you're running on the trial license will be included, and then when that 30 days runs out, it's just going to revert back to the free edition. That mainly applies for the Veeam backup and replication solution, as well as the Veeam 1 monitoring and reporting solution. And then the Veeam endpoint backup, that is a completely free tool. We don't even have a paid edition for it. But like I said, guys, if you have any questions around any of these products, free and or paid, Veeam or StarWind, please throw that in the Q&A box. And now I really want to open it up for questions here. Max and I can answer any questions you guys have thrown in there. So we'll just give it a couple minutes here, and we'll look over some questions you guys have submitted.
All right, guys, let's take some of these questions. Let's see. Looks like our first question is from Scott. He asks, please correct me if I'm wrong, but you said Veeam is completely agentless?
I will take that question there, Emily. Yes, Scott, the Veeam solution, Veeam Availability Suite solution, is absolutely agentless. No agents at all, including that product there. And that is one of the special things about the Veeam solution as well. Right? So we're not charging you for additional agents. You don't have to worry about maintaining those or updating those. So to answer your question, no agents at all.
Great. Luke wants to know, what is the benefit of Veeam replication versus native Hyper-V replication?
Yeah, Luke, so there are a number of different reasons why you would leverage Veeam replication. First off, keep in mind, the Veeam solution, it's backup and replication, right? So in a case of a true disaster, that's really when you want to leverage the replication job. Veeam backup is going to be a compressed and deduplicated backup file just on any disk-based repository, right? So whether you want to back up to a NAS device or older SAN you have, Windows Server, completely up to you. So I would say one of the biggest benefits is the flexibility that you have with Veeam replication. You can replicate your VMs to a Veeam cloud provider if you'd like. You can replicate your VMs to another Hyper-V box of your own if you'd like. So really the options are limitless there for you.
Great. Anthony would like to know, if you add in a third large node, how does that increase storage?
And I will take that question. There are two possible options. One, the total storage capacity of the appliance will increase by half of that node capacity. So we will be essentially rebalancing the entire load between three boxes. Or the added node can add a whole new resiliency domain in this config. So there will be three active replicas. So third node will add an extra copy but not add extra capacity.
All right, fantastic. Let's see. Here's another question from Anthony. What is the max specs per node on a large system?
So on a large system, I think maximum specs per node is dual 2660 CPUs, which is, I guess, 20 cores per server. It's 512 or actually 256 gigabytes of RAM, and it is up to 8 terabytes of usable capacity, including the flash tier, or if you decide to use flash as a whole separate pinpointed storage for your high I/O applications, that's going to give you another 1.5 terabyte of flash, highly available and usable on these systems.
Great. Let's see. Brian asks, is the endpoint backup free meant to be used in a corporate environment or more for home use?
Great question there, Brian. It's one we get every day here. So currently that endpoint product, like I said, it is a free tool there, and it was really built for backing up your Windows-based laptops and desktops. Now, it is going to be VSS aware, and we have had people leveraging that tool for physical server, Windows server backups. Now, is its current version, is that what it was built for? No. Does it have the ability to do so? Absolutely. Now, also something to keep in mind with that Veeam endpoint product is, one, it's free, and then two, later this year, there's another release of that product as well. And there is talks about that next release having full-blown physical server support, where you can enable our application-aware processing just like you can with the Veeam Availability Suite solution, right? So we grab and we leverage the Microsoft VSS framework so we can quiesce those physical servers, right? Quiesce the virtual machine just like we would a physical machine there, and so we can grab a clean, transactionally consistent copy of that box for you. So to answer your question, today, no. In the next version, absolutely.
Great. Let's see. Asher wants to know, does the license still expire?
Yeah, so the Veeam license there, and it depends on which license you're referring to. So if you purchase Veeam licensing today, it is a perpetual license. You own it, so it is not going to expire. Now, as far as support there, maintain support. But if you go to the website and download a trial license, then you have 30 days from the time that you download that license, not from the time of install. And then when that 30 days runs out, it just reverts back to the free edition. So it really just doesn't go away. You don't have to reconfigure anything, but you're just going to lose the functionality.
All right, great. Let's see. If you have 3 nodes, is it keeping a copy of each VM on all 3 of the nodes, or does it only keep 2 copies on the 3 nodes?
Okay, and I will take that question. Good question. As I mentioned, we can maintain both levels of resiliency. By default, we keep 2 copies of each virtual machine, and the resiliency can also be increased to keeping 3 nodes at all time.
Fantastic. Is there any added cost with having Veeam on the box, or is that included in the initial cost?
It is included in the initial cost, and moreover, some customers of ours who have recently purchased Veeam and still have a valid ASM contract with them can technically bring in their own Veeam license to the appliance.
All right, great. How are the new versions of the different components handled? Currently Veeam 9, when Veeam 10 is, or when V10 is released, is it acquired from Veeam or StarWind?
So I will handle this one as, I guess, more appliance related as a component. And it is obtained from StarWind. And as long as you, sorry, as long as you keep your ASM up and running and valid, I think Veeam's policy does allow upgrading to version 10 when it is released if you're a valid Veeam customer. So same rules should apply to the StarWind appliance. And if you decide you want to renew or if you want to purchase Veeam version 10 when it is released to a StarWind appliance, then it is done through StarWind.
Great. Mark has a question. What are my support options with StarWind's appliance?
There are actually multiple options, and that's a big question. Basic warranty for the appliance includes StarWind supporting all components of the appliance, starting with the power cable and ending with a disk tray on the hardware level, and the hypervisor and all software components installed on the appliance on the software level. So basically, if you ever get into any kind of trouble, if something breaks in the appliance, you just call StarWind and we replace it. If it's a hypervisor issue, you call StarWind and we fix it. If it's a storage stack issue, you also call us and we replace it. This way, we try to provide a single point of contact support, running a 24/7 support center, and really trying to be as easy on the customers as it can possibly be, to make sure that they're getting good service and they never get to a phase of finger pointing with hypervisor vendors saying this is not the solution we want, with the backup vendors saying that there are problems with the storage. We just try to get it all away from the customers, and this will make sure that they get good customer experience and good service.
Great. Scott would like to know, would you ever install Veeam on an Hyper-V host, or is it always on its own server, either hardware or VM?
Great question there. It's actually one we get quite a bit, actually. So there's things to consider. So can you install Veeam on the Hyper-V box? Yes. Like we said, it is a Windows application, and Hyper-V is Windows. So can you do it? Yes. Is it a best practice? I would say no. So if you have the ability to spin up either a Windows virtual machine, or if you have a physical Windows box you can install Veeam on, I would absolutely recommend that, because Veeam does use a SQL Express database on the back end to hold and collect all that data there, based off your backup jobs, your configuration, things like that. So can you? Yes. Is it a best practice? No. So hopefully that answers your question there, Scott.
All right. This is a question for you again, Cody, and this is one from Kip. You said it's like a spare tire. Does that mean I need to drive slower until it completely restores, like a donut spare?
Kip, I love the wording on the question there, so I appreciate that. But if you think about the instant VM recovery, the process there, what that is built for, the reason we include that functionality is maybe you have a file server in your environment, right, and the file server crashed, right? So what we can do is boot it from your backup storage just so your users now have access to that file server. Yes, dependent on which backup repository type you are backing up to, because that backup file, we're going to be running the VM from the compressed and deduplicated backup file. So yes, you are going to see a bit of a performance hit there, but your users now have access to the machine, unlike when it was down just a few minutes ago. So when you're looking at the backup repository there for your jobs, consider the performance of the backup repository itself.
All right, fantastic. Luke asks, with a 2-node StarWind Hyper-V setup, is the failover automatic for all VMs? If so, what is the downtime experienced by end users? Or is the setup a true active-active so the end users would experience no downtime?
So I'll handle this one. Peculiar to Hyper-V, and well, technically peculiar to StarWind 2-node solution, failover is automatic for all virtual machines and for the storage. So there is no active-passive configuration where if one node goes down, you need to start the storage on the other node and start the virtual machines on the other node. Now, Hyper-V maintains Hyper-V high availability, which will restart all the virtual machines on the other nodes which are active if the parent node has failed. If there was a soft shutdown, it will live migrate those virtual machines. So basically with Hyper-V, users will experience a reboot of the machine they're accessing, and to get uninterrupted service, you need to go with VMware and you need to go with VMware fault tolerance. But that's a whole different feature. That's a whole different hardware requirement, as a fault-tolerant virtual machine requires a dedicated networking connection between the nodes, recommended 10G, and it also requires VMware licensing, which is much higher than Simple Essentials Plus. So there is a premium for uninterrupted access, but with a 2-node StarWind Hyper-V setup or a 2-node vSphere setup with Essentials Plus, we simply restart all the virtual machines on the other node.
All right, fantastic. Fred would like to know, how do you handle support renewals, Veeam and StarWind separately?
We try to keep it uniform. So we have StarWind appliance renewal. So what we'll try to do is to get you a single contract and never separate it into different components. So when you buy the solution, you simply decide what you want to do. You want to have 3 years of standard support. You want to have 3 years of premium support. And depending on that, it will list support for all the components. So there is no need to do separate renewals at this point.
All right. What's the difference between Veeam Backup Free and Veeam One Free?
I guess I will take that question, given that it is Veeam related. So, big differences there between Veeam Backup and Replication and Veeam One. Veeam Backup and Replication, that's going to be the product that's actually protecting your environment. Right, that's going to be performing all the backup jobs that result in the compressed and deduplicated backup file on any disk-based repository. That is going to be the Veeam Backup piece. Veeam One, that's going to give you visibility into your virtual environment there. So there's a number of different components that make up Veeam One, 3 to be specific. There's the monitor client, there's Veeam One Reporter, and then there's Veeam One Business View. The Veeam One Reporter and the Veeam One Business View are web-based consoles. Reporter allows you to automate reports, right? Capacity planning for your backup repository is an example. What it'll do is actually calculate out what type of Veeam backup method you're leveraging, how much data is being backed up, and then also how much storage left is on your backup repository, which in this case might be that StarWind appliance. And then it's actually going to calculate out exactly how many days worth of backups you actually have left. So this helps organizations plan for future purchases, and that's just an example of some of the information Veeam One is going to provide. Veeam One gives you visibility, while backup actually protects the environment. So hopefully that answers your question there, and if not, throw another question in there, and we can take a deeper dive into it.
All right, great. Let's see. It looks like we have one more question. So Julius says he's a newbie, but he wanted to know if StarWind, Veeam, and 5.9 are 3 separate products. Are they installed separately and used separately? Or is there a suite available with one integrated service for all 3 products?
I will definitely take that question. And the question is really good, and there are multiple ways to answer it. If there is a suite, yes, there is a suite, and it's called StarWind Hyper-converged Appliance, which includes all these three products with a single pane of glass management console. It's only available for StarWind Hyper-converged Appliance customers. And other than that, these are three separate products managed through three separate management windows. So really, that's a suite which is peculiar to StarWind Hyper-converged Appliance.
All right, guys. It looks like we are out of questions at this time. But thank y'all so much for that awesome presentation. Do y'all have any final words for our audience?
This is Cody on the Veeam side there, guys. Go to the website, check out those free products like I was saying. Download the 30-day trial. It's 30 days from the time that you download it. And, hey, if you don't like it, you can get rid of it. But I have a feeling you guys will there, and especially that Veeam endpoint product. So I know somebody had asked a question earlier about if that's for home use or corporate use, and it can be used for both. So it's free. Absolutely go to the website and check it out.
And Max at StarWind here. Feel free to come to our website anytime. We have all the appliance details listed there. We'll be updating our spec sheet really soon with new models available, with more storage and more compute per node, so you can make that low footprint entry in the hyper-converged world and see how your company can benefit from that. And for all pricing, for all questions, feel free to call our office, and our sales reps will gladly help you with any questions you might have.
All right, fantastic, guys. Thank you so much for that awesome presentation. I just want to remind everyone that if your question wasn't addressed live, somebody will be able to follow up with you. Also, it's a great idea to follow both StarWind and Veeam in the Spiceworks community. Both of these vendors have really great green guys. Max, I believe you're a green guy, and then Andrew is the Veeam green guy. So reach out to them if you have any additional questions, or contact them via their website. Thanks so much to StarWind and Veeam for creating today's content and sponsoring this great event, and thanks to each and every one of you for tuning in today. We hope to see you back soon for another Spiceworks Partner webinar. But until then, stay safe and keep it spicy.